The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we're going to talk about Owen Wolff's contract extension. We'll talk about what we might see the rest of the offseason as far as incoming and outgoing players. And we're going to be joined by Apple TV's Paul Dolan to chat about Jayden Nelson. Paul has covered the Whitecaps for a really long time and has some great insights on Austin's new player. My name's Landon Cottam, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and I will agree with what you said about Paul Dolan. And since we just hung up with him, I would encourage all the listeners to stick around for it, because even if you think you know everything about Jayden Nelson, you get a lot of insights from a guy that knows a lot about this game and a lot about the Whitecaps, and it's just like a delight to talk to.
Yeah, Paul's super smart. Always a lot of fun.
Do you want to talk about New Year's Day? We hung out at New Year's Day at Turnstile.
Oh, yeah.
It's good to see people. Yeah, feels like forever ago now. But it's only a few days ago, but it's always good to get the folks out. Like, the weather was nice. Had a lot of great conversations. Enjoyed the beer. Had some good snacks. Yeah, and I had the good Meteor Pizza that shows up every year, regardless of where we happen to be.
Yeah, it was definitely a great time. Thanks to everyone who came out and showed up. It's one of my favorite traditions. We did it a little bit lower lift on our end this year, which was much needed after a very ill Christmas break on my end. But yeah, very grateful to all the folks who came out and remind us why we do this.
One other thing that I wrote in these notes, because I believe this to be true, is we never announced the winners of the over-under game. We did the results with Scott, but I don't think we ever actually said who won. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
We're great at admin, Jeremiah.
Yes. All right. So the top three, and this is no fault for Scott, because what he said this on December 15th, and we're just now getting around to announce it. Everybody, all three of these people got 16 correct. The final order, we had to go to the tiebreaker. Kaysen Buffalo was 1. Preston B was 2. Ethan Turner was 3. So Kaysen, Preston, Ethan, first, second, third. We'll get a hold of your email addresses. Or at least Kaysen's email address, and send you the gift back, but sorry for not closing that one out. We won't mention that R.A. Silva finished last, because that would just be mean.
Yeah, that would be rude.
Yeah, let's not do that.
All right, let's get into the news of the week. We got a tip-off from Tom Bogert at the end of last week, I believe, but got it official today from the club, which is Owen Wolff has signed a new contract, multi-year, and he'll now be a U22 initiative player instead of just a regular homegrown. What are the rest of the details here, Jeremiah?
I mean, the only other thing that we really learned specifically math-wise on this is that Wolff's new contract is guaranteed through June 2030. So this is now, I think, obviously he can't be sold still at any point in that, but that's really like a statement that he's planning to be a part, or Austin's at least planning to have him as part of the roster for a long, long time. So let's talk about the U22 initiative, I think. Like what it is, why Austin would do it at this point in time. I think it's kind of interesting. Do you want to start? You want to take off the first part of that?
Yeah, just like what it is and why it exists is essentially for teams to be able to spend money on young, promising players that will hopefully have sell-on value without taking up one of the other more valuable roster designations. I think there's for a while where you see Miguel Almiron is kind of still the golden example of this, where you take a young, kind of unproven player from South America who's had some success there, bring him to MLS for a few years, hope they explode, and then you can sell them to Europe for way more than you bought them for. A lot of people tried to start doing that, and it didn't work very often. And so I think probably to keep teams from giving up and just like not trying to do that anymore, what they did was introduce this U22 initiative where you can spend a transfer fee, you can pay them, I think it's up to the max budget charge. So essentially like the DP threshold. But if they're under the age of 22, you can, they only hit your cap at a limited amount. So it's like between 200 and 250K. So it's essentially to incentivize teams to take chances on young players without being penalized one of their more valuable like TAM or DP spots that would normally be required for the the price you pay for that player. For Owen, it seems like the reason why this happened is, so Taylor Twellman and Tom Bogert were sharing some details on social media accounts. According to Twellman, some teams were coming after Owen, essentially. And Owen was on he renewed his contract. Do you remember what his salary was? It was senior minimum-ish, right? Like he was still on the supplemental roster. So
he was still on the supplemental roster for sure. Yeah.
So it sounds like other teams were coming and saying, "Hey, we'll pay you better than that. We'll put you at a higher spot than that." Which, as an Austin fan, saying like, "Oh, hey, he's on the supplemental roster," meaning we can fill all of our other spots. But that's not very fair to Owen, who was by miles our best player last year, to say like, no, you signed a contract. So you could do that. You could twist his arm and say like, you signed a contract, we're not going to do anything. I don't think that's a great way to motivate your best player. So Austin said, okay, these people are coming after him. We either have to let him go or make him happy to stay here. And they chose the latter.
Yeah, so what it means realistically, right, is Owen probably got a pretty good size raise, and he does not count the full amount of that, and probably less than half that in terms of budget charge for the club.
I think he'll probably be, I think his budget charge will end up being $250K, but I could be wrong. And then as far as how much he can be paid, the rules are confusing, but the max is somewhere between $800K and $1 million as far as what he can be paid on this new contract. I don't know that he's necessarily making that much. It could be lower than that, but I think there's some significance to the date. So it's guaranteed through June of 2030. The rules state for a U22 player, you have to sign the U22 deal before you turn 22 years old. Owen turned 21 last week, so we're good there. And then the deal can last until the season in which you turn 25. Guess which year Owen turns 25? It's the 29-30. Yeah. He'll turn 25 at the end of 2029, but with the schedule shift, I'm assuming that's why it will last through midway of that next year. So that is why the contract is so long. My guess, we'll find out what the salary is when the MLSPA puts out the numbers, because the league does not do that. But my guess is, if you remember several years ago, Reggie Cannon signed a new long-term deal with FC Dallas when there's a lot of talk of him getting sold to Europe. What his contract looked like is it was a pay raise at the front, but then every year that number went up.
I remember that deal now.
And so it's essentially telling Reggie Cannon, yes, and this was in a time where MLS teams were kind of holding players hostage a little bit and saying, no, we locked you in for a good number. We're not going to let you go. And so that was one of the first ones I heard of where they're saying, we're going to lock you in long term so that we can actually sell you for a price that we believe is fair. But each year that we hold on to you, we're going to pay you more and more. So that way, if we don't let you go, you are still raising your paycheck every year, essentially. Maybe you are not getting the sale that you want, but you're going to get paid more and more every year. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what Owen's contract looks like. That, okay, yeah, we have you locked in, but we're still going to be taking offers. I'm sure if you keep playing like you do, more offers are going to be coming in. And so if something comes in that sounds good to us, we'll let you leave. And if we don't let you leave, we're going to compensate you appropriately.
And I think the one thing I think on that is like the rumors from 12 were all teams within the league. I would imagine that the offer that Austin is waiting for that's going to make a difference is not going to be coming from in the United States. It's probably going to be coming from Europe. So that puts him in like a very different pay grade. And you said we don't want to make our best player angry, which reminds me, another thing that we either didn't talk about or it happened since the last time we talked was Owen was recently named Austin FC's Offensive Player of the Year by the club. With Brad Stuber being Defensive Player of the Year, which seemed like the most no-brainery possible choices to make right there. Like, who else would it be? But yeah, obviously got a great year, and I love that they find these like random PR tidbits that they drop into the press releases. And one of the things, of his 7 goals, 6 of them were match winners, setting a new club record for the most game-winning goal contributions in a single season. I know you love these like the most important thing in league history for a team that's existed for like 5 seasons. This is another one of those.
But we're going to have them in our brain for future trivia competitions. So I love it.
Absolutely. Okay, so the big question for me, where do we think we're going to see him in 2026? Do we continue to see him in this kind of wherever he's needed because he's the best player we have at several positions? Kind of, and we could probably get into this, I think, maybe later for the offseason, but just off the top of your head, do you think that does this contract really say anything about what we could expect to see out of Owen Wolff on the field?
So it does put him onto the senior roster, meaning that is one fewer senior roster player we can sign until we make some other moves.
That'd be 0, by the way.
Yeah, 0 right now. We're full up at 20. We'll talk about that more in the second segment, but on the roster we have right now, it would look like we're relying on Owen to be our primary chance creator. I don't like that because he was our leading assister in the last season, but I think he was like 26th overall in the whole league, meaning there's like multiple players on a few teams and then a player on almost every team who had more assists than him. This is no discredit to Owen. I just don't think that's the kind of player he is. And if you're asking him to do that, I think you're asking him to do a thing that's not natural to him. If he's getting 7 or 8 assists as our secondary assister, fantastic. Like, that's great. But if he's going to get those exact same numbers, even though that would be a good season for him, it's not good enough for Austin to be a competitive team.
And the only way that works is if somehow 2026 Owen is as much better than 2025 Owen as 2025 was to 2024, but 2025 was like such a leap ahead. I don't think you can assume that same level of advancement for next year. Like, I'm sure he'll grow and be better, but I don't know. I just I don't see that you get that kind of development during one offseason from him at this point in his career.
And I think another thing is like the needs of the team. How do you get your best 11 players on the field? A lot of times that meant playing Owen as a nominal winger. And I don't get as worked up about that as some folks do, because even when he was playing on the wing, he was floating inside and occupying the spaces that a number 10 might do on a lot of teams, where he would float out wide, but 10s do that all the time. Like Carlos Heel floats wide. The guy from Portland, whose name I can't remember right now, he plays super wide all the time, but is their primary chance creator. And so that doesn't bother me as much. What I do think would need to change going into the season, if Owen is expected to be as impactful and be that guy, we have to find ways to get him the ball more, because there would be games where he didn't really touch the ball. And so, sure, play him on the wing, do whatever you need to do to get the best players on the field, but you have to have a game plan to get him involved in every game consistently, if that's the role you're asking him to play.
And you need people who can do it, not just the game plan. Yeah,
you need both. Like, I mean, I think we lacked both last year, but doesn't seem like we've added the personnel necessarily. So if this is the way we're going, Nico Estevez needs to show that he can put that game plan in place that will allow Owen to be the player we need him to be.
Well, do you have any other thing that's Owen specific you want to talk about, or do you want to sort of set this next segment up and take a break?
I'm just like on a personal level, like, congrats to Owen, man. Like, this is great. It's a huge milestone to show that. I mean, look around the league at like the bad roster decisions that have been made. Dane St. Clair won goalkeeper of the year and then left his team for free to go sign with the title winners. Like, that is a major failure. Locking up Owen like this and rewarding him for his play, keeping him motivated to continue getting better is great. Like, congrats to the kid for getting paid.
Yeah, especially for a kid that took a lot of unfair criticism, and we're pretty sure we know he heard it. So yeah, I think we should take a moment to celebrate all that he's done and be happy for him with this new deal, and just be happy for us that we get to watch him play in Austin for as long as we will get to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point as well, is that this shows that they're not selling him this offseason. Like maybe this summer, if the right deal comes in, they'll still do it. But it seems like they're saying, we don't think he's reached his full value. So we're going to keep using him here until he does that. And then at that point, we'll sell, which means we're going to get to watch him for a bit longer. All right, we are going to talk to Paul Dolan about Jayden Nelson later on in the show. In this next segment, we're going to talk about the state of the roster and kind of who's gone out, who's come in, and then what are the questions remaining for the rest of the offseason. So hang tight. We'll be right back with that.
No one is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment that you can check out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to FEF.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FEF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balance. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. All right, we are back. We're going to dive a little bit into the state of the Austin FC roster as it sits right now and kind of ask the remaining questions of what else might change at this point. What could we expect to potentially change between now and opening day? Jeremiah, let's start with, just as a reminder, because I feel like a lot has happened in the last couple of months. So it's probably good to kind of go back and remind people, because I needed reminding of this earlier today, of who's left and who has joined. So of the folks who has left, Julio Cascante and Diego Rubio were out of contract. They were allowed to leave. Stephen Cleveland was re-signed. His option was picked up, but then traded to Sporting Kansas City, ?
That sounds right. Yes.
Osman Bukhari, the surprise move, shipped off to Poland for a shockingly high amount of money. And then the big question mark on the outgoing is Guilherme Biru. We saw a post, him and his agent were talking about, made a cryptic message about discussing his future. They signed a replacement for him before he's left. So I wouldn't be shocked if within a couple of weeks we add him to this list, but he's not there officially yet. Any thoughts on these guys, or can we move on to the incoming players?
I think, obviously the Bukhari one's the big one. I don't think there's anything that we're going to, well, I guess the bigger one, if that happens too, it's like the next big one, but I don't think we're going to miss a lot of those guys. None of these were really that surprising. They're ones that you'd hope that there would be corresponding moves to strengthen the talent coming in. And so I think I'm not too stressed out about, especially after seeing some of the other, like what you talked about in Minnesota and what we talked about with Vancouver in the conversation with Paul. So no, let's move on to the ends.
Yeah, so incoming. I forgot this one had been made official, but Irvin Torres signed a homegrown deal, so he is now officially on the first team. Then John Bell was added in free agency. Jayden Nelson, who we're going to talk about with Paul Dolan here in a moment, was traded from the Vancouver Whitecaps. We also got not DJ Rosales, Joseph Rosales in a trade from Minnesota. And then, thank you for catching this one. Damian Loss returns on loan. And so far, it looks like he's going to be our backup goalkeeper right now, which is kind of what we expected, right?
Yeah, there's nothing else. So I don't remember this. Has Damian Loss, has he ever spent? Oh, he was the second team keeper the first year, correct? They won the cup. Okay,
I believe he did preseason, the whole preseason, last year as well. So he joined Austin for preseason and then went back to Louisville after preseason, which, I think makes sense. So there's still a chance, he's here for now, but it makes a lot of sense that the plan is for him to be the backup right now. That's what I'll
That's
say
right,
about
because
that.
we had the weird divorced parent moment where they played against Louisville and Damian started the game with Austin, and then they met at the McDonald's across the street from Q2 on Breaker there,
Exactly.
and then Louisville took him home on the bus and played the rest of the offseason. I forgot about that one. Yeah.
So we mentioned this in the first segment. We are now, with Owen signing the U22 contract, we believe we're now at our full 20-man senior roster, meaning if we're going to make any substantial signings going forward, somebody has to leave first to make room for them. Guilherme Biru, who we just talked about, that is kind of the obvious one. So that's at least one who we're expecting to maybe move here in the near future. Who else could we see leaving, or who else are we hoping might leave in the near future to open up some more space?
I think the next one of these has to be a shout out to Mike Corniola, knowing that we have the 2 buyouts. Like Hunter Obrion is a buyout. Seems like a pretty appealing way to clear up some space.
Yeah, because I
and
think
a roster spot, and not somebody's in demand, right?
One more guaranteed year too, so it's not crazy expensive. I think he's on $500,000 or something like that. So not ideal. Be cooler if you could move him, but I don't know what the market's going to be like for him right now. There was talk, was it towards the end of the year, like in the summer, about him maybe going to Colombia, but
right.
That never came to fruition. Maybe there's a market for him and we could move him that way, but a buyout wouldn't be crazy. Who else would be on your list of trying to move them elsewhere?
Well, in the same vein of disappointing attackers, Robert Taylor, if you could find somewhere to ship him, that would be okay. And then, after that, assuming Buter is out, I don't know if there's like a lot of surplus that Austin has at any position where I would want to ship any of these guys out. Do you have anybody specific in mind?
I think there's still some space in the midfield, especially. It looks like Austin's maybe leaning towards that 3 at the back look. Could be wrong, but if that's the case, we have 4 center backs right now, meaning if we start 3 at the back, if Biru leaves and we start 3 at the back, it's going to be 3 center backs on the field, 1 on the bench, and that will be all we have. And then with Biru, you could slot him back into that spot, but looking around at the rest of the roster, there's not really any other players on the field that you would say, oh yeah, he naturally slots back into a center back position. Maybe Dessler could do that, and you could play someone else on that right wing back. But if we're going to play 3 center backs all the time, center back looks a little bit thin at the moment. So I don't think you can or would want to move any of those guys, right?
No.
Besard Sabovic is the name that comes to mind. I still think he could potentially turn into a decent MLS player, but we're pretty congested at that position right now. I'm hoping Nico Duversarski can take a step forward this year. I'm hoping Irvin Torres can be a guy that you can rely on in certain moments this year. If that's the case, and if we do bring in another attacking player, that makes it even more crowded. Say we bring in an attacking midfielder, that's less time for Sabovic on the field. Say we bring in another winger, that probably means Owen's playing in the midfield, and it makes it more crowded in the midfield. So Sabovic is a guy who I still believe could be good, but maybe we don't have the time to wait around and find out.
That makes a lot of sense to me too. That's the that's a move that, but you don't think that, I guess it doesn't matter. I was gonna say it's probably not a move that generates a ton of cash, but at this point,
yeah, I mean, it
flexibility
opens the space essentially.
Yeah, it opens the space. Yeah, and it opens an international slot too, right? Which is probably important.
I believe he is still international.
So you talked about bringing people in. Do you think Austin's going to bring in a DP during this offseason?
That is a great question. So we are now, is this the first time we've ever used all 3 of our U22 spots?
I think so.
Maybe at one point we had Gite, Kolmanich, and Rodney.
Oh, I forgot that Rodney was a U22. Then that would have been the case. Yes.
But for the last few seasons, we have not been using all the spaces. We now have 3 U22 players now that Owen signed that contract. As a reminder, the way forward, like our spending is pretty tight right now as far as salary budget goes. we might go that 2-4-2 route where we use 2 DPs. It opens up a 4th U22 spot, and then we get some extra allocation money on top of that to make this roster work. Maybe we could still do that. Maybe we'll still do the DP. Tom Bogert seems to be hinting or believing that we are going to replace Osman Bukhari with an attacking player as a designated player. He has not outright said that he's heard anything. So I don't know if he does know something or if he's just assuming that's what we're going to do without really looking deeper into what our options truly are. So I don't know. Like, what would you put the odds at right now?
Man, I feel like I'm going to be... I don't feel that the odds are very high that anything's going to happen during this offseason on that front. I don't see where the flexibility is. Because I would understand it if we went 2 and 4, where that extra allocation money becomes really important because of everything that Roto's talked about for the last 2 years about all this allocation hell that the team was in. Like, the man maybe is a genius, but I just don't see how he could have made everything right like that quickly to where Austin would suddenly be in a position to be splashing around a bunch of it during this offseason. It's like, I don't expect to see it.
But you don't have
Maybe
to
we see
use
it in
a
the
lot.
summer.
You don't have to use a lot of allocation money on the DP itself. You just need enough to go around to the rest of the players. So let's say we sell Biru for, I don't know, $3 million or whatever. We convert some of that to GAM. That makes the rest of our roster good. And then we have an open roster spot. If we have $800K in cap space, then we could still get a DP.
Well, then what do you think the odds of this happening are?
I mean, I would maybe call it a coin flip right now because without more information, which we don't have much information, right? This is educated guesses as to far as how much flexibility they actually have still. It's so hard to know, but the fact that Bogert seems to believe that we are going to use that extra space makes me think maybe they are. And then pair that with the Tadeo Allende rumor. I don't know if we're actually still in for them. Maybe we never were, and that's totally made up. But if it is true that Austin even reached out, it means they're open to the idea of adding someone of that price and that caliber to the roster, which would make me think that he could be, like, they could be adding a DP. Maybe that was the deal breaker, and they're like, we're going to try to get him as a TAM player, and that's the only way it works. Okay, the price is going up. We're out. We can't do it. That could be true too.
Yeah, but this all comes down to the fact that there's a whole world of soccer players. Roto's probably talking to dozens of them right now. Like, I don't know what will happen. I'm trying to, and maybe this is just like preparing myself for a world where nothing else changes, but like, I don't want to put all my hopes on the 2026 season on bringing in a big chance creating designated player because there aren't that many around. We don't have a great history on hitting with designated players, period. And they could be really, like, anybody that's proven is going to be really expensive. And then also at the same time, there may be somebody that's going to be awesome that I don't even know about because he plays in Poland or Finland or Brazil or, somewhere that I don't follow.
Yeah. So looking at these moves, what we have now, let's say the roster stays exactly like it is right now. Do you think this roster is better than the one we finished last season with?
This roster, I'll have an answer.
And let's say we're counting healthy people. So Brandon Vasquez does not count on either side.
Darn it! That was going to be my swinging for this one. It's like at some point this season we'll have a healthy Brandon Vasquez, and we did not at the end of last season. So that was going to be my guess. This team is better. I don't know if this team is more talented, but it feels like with the pieces that we brought in, like I could see the way that it fits together better than last year's team did. Like for whatever reason, Bukhari did not mesh well with the other guys up top, and I don't know that it was like necessarily anything we should just put at his feet, but I think maybe the guys we brought in have a better chance of like being able to make a difference, and especially after having this conversation about Jayden Nelson, like maybe he's the guy that does fit well with who we already have. So I have reason to have hope that this team is better than it was last year, but not like all of a sudden we're a top 3 team. This is we're going to be 6 or 7, again, and, fight for the best possible outcome being like maybe a home game in the playoffs.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's like some marginal upgrades here and there. And then if Nelson can be what we think and hope he can be, replacing a DP with a guy who is far from a DP with the same output, like that's good business right there. The thing is, if you're not bringing in another DP or someone else to be the difference maker, it's kind of a sideways move, right?
Right.
Right. We're still TBD. We've maybe created the potential to become a better team, like an obviously better team. I don't know that we are that better team right now. Not by much, if we are.
Yeah, Rosales is the only one that you can consider like a player that has for sure been brought in that upgrades the best 11.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the rest is all like potential and trade-offs where you say, okay, Bell's way cheaper than Cascante for similar to maybe marginally better quality. I think that's the conversation you're having at any of the other positions. Whereas you're right, Rosales, as far as starters go, he's the only one that's like, this is probably an upgrade. Maybe you could make the argument for Nelson, and maybe he will be that, but I don't know that we have a big enough body of evidence to say that he is definitely an upgrade over Bukhari. Any other questions for the offseason here, Jeremiah?
I guess the one thing that I want to make sure that everybody knows about is we talked about preseasons like a week out, and
we didn't really talk about that, did we?
So we didn't. Okay, we think preseason's about a week out.
Yeah, it's not been announced by the club yet, but other teams have announced that their players will be reporting this coming Saturday. Looking back at last year, Austin's opening game was February 22nd, and they reported to camp the second Saturday in January. So all signs are pointing towards Austin FC players will be reporting to camp this coming Saturday, and then we'll start training the following Monday.
Sorry, there's the Coachella Valley Invitational that comes up, I think, early February. But unlike a lot of other leagues you may follow, like this doesn't mean that all of a sudden the offseason is over, right? Like these moves may take time, and we may be bringing in players, 2 months from now that will be able to make a difference for this club. So like, don't think that just because the preseason is about to start that Austin's done making deals, and we're definitely locked in with the roster that we have right now.
Yeah, a lot of the world transfer windows are opening like right now or in the next week or two. So that's really when every team that could potentially be involved will have the freedom and the time to pay attention to things like this. So yeah, there's still lots of time. Sooner is better, right? To get everyone in as quickly as possible, get a preseason, get incorporated into the team well, especially if we're hoping to bring in a real difference maker to this team. Getting them in sooner is going to be better. But yeah, the off season is long, and there's still a lot of time for stuff to change. All right, let's take a break, and then we'll come back and be joined by Paul Dolan. Paul is a joy. I think this is the third time we've had him on the show. The other times were to preview Vancouver matches, but because we've liked the conversations with him so much, we thought it would be fun to have him on to talk about Jayden Nelson specifically, and he did not disappoint. So hang tight, and we'll be right back with Paul.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage Real Estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com.
And our premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities, but only supports this podcast because
Austin is going to go with a 2-4 model, and we're going to sit here right
Diego
now.
Luna.
Yeah, we're talking about how we're not going to be better right now, but that Austin's going to surprise everybody. Nico Estevez is going to be the man that we didn't know him to be before, and Austin's going to win the title this year.
Oh, man, McGuire Woods is really calling their shot on that one, huh?
I know. It's very specific, too.
Contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information. To help us take a deeper dive into the new Austin FC signing, Jayden Nelson, we are joined today by Paul Dolan, who is a member of the Canadian Soccer Hall of Fame, former Canadian national team goalkeeper, where he once had a chicken thrown at him during a goal kick at the World Cup in Mexico. But more important to this conversation, he has covered Jayden Nelson's former team, the Vancouver Whitecaps, as a radio and TV analyst since they joined MLS, I believe. Paul, welcome back to Moon Tower Soccer.
It's great to be back. And honestly, what could be more important than discussing a chicken being chucked at someone in a World Cup game?
So you're playing against France. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was the opener for us in the 1986 World Cup. And you know, Le Coq, right? The rooster is the French logo and national symbol on their jerseys. And so I guess this is what I found out at the age of 20 at the World Cup is they bring a rooster, the fans do, behind one goal, and it's full of French supporters. And just as I went to take a goal kick, it comes fluttering down this rooster right next to where I'm about to strike the ball. So I just stood there with my hands on my hips, and the linesman came over, and he draped it in his flag and took it off the field. So that was something else. I see that blooper reel now everywhere I go around the world, or I used to anyway. I think it's too old now for people to care.
The AR was very casual about it and very confident in picking up that chicken as he carried it off the field.
It's as if he had done it a few times before, wasn't it?
And you answered one of my questions I was curious if it was a France fan or just a local Mexican fan who just happened to be there. You think it was a French fan, meaning they sourced a local chicken to sneak into the stadium, probably.
That's it. They've gone to some lengths to try to intimidate the young Canadian keeper, as if they needed to, right? They're France and we're Canada.
Okay, let's talk about Jayden Nelson now. So Jayden Nelson, 23-year-old attacking player, coming to Austin from the Whitecaps. It was $1.25 million in GAM, plus a draft pick and then a potential sell-on percentage. We can talk about how he's going to fit in Austin, but as in Vancouver, how are folks feeling about this one?
Especially after Ali Ahmed was sold yesterday to Norwich City. Yeah. You've had your two best attacking players in wide positions, especially on the left side. Although Jayden Nelson and Ali Ahmed, for that matter, they can play either side. And that was what was really good about Jesper Sorensen's system, is that there was a bit of flexibility in those positions. But with both players gone now, both Canadian players as well, who the home supporters like to support, I think only in that the Whitecap fans understood that Jayden Nelson wanted more playing time, and he just wasn't able to get it because of Ali Ahmed. So that's a different question now with Ryan Gauld maybe coming back to fill that position. But one thing that I really liked about Jayden Nelson, right near the end of the campaign it was for the Whitecaps, where he wasn't getting as many minutes, was he said, how can I complain? The team's doing so well. The players that are playing in those positions have made it really difficult for me to get back into the team. And he had an excellent attitude about it. And the fact that he has MLS experience with Toronto FC before going to Europe and then coming back, I like the move from an Austin perspective. I really do, even for $1.25 million. And it does leave the Whitecaps, I think, shorthanded here. I think they'll find someone because Axel Schuster's done a really good job at doing that for the Whitecaps. But I think it's a great pickup for Austin FC.
Well, so when you think about, I mean, I'm sure you don't know a ton about like the Austin setup, but what can fans expect to see from him? Like, what kind of player is he that you've observed over time when he's been in the team?
Check out the first game of the season for the Whitecaps in Portland and how he destroyed the Timber defense. Now, there's a couple of caveats I have to point out. I'm going to be honest with you here. That was his best game of the season, the first game of the year, and it was against, for the most part, 10 men when Kamal Miller was sent off early in that game. So you have to, I think, bring that into the equation. But he terrorized the Portland defense with his directness. And that's what I love so much about it, because so oftentimes you'll see tricky players who might beat the man and then, try to beat him again a different way. But he just gets forward. He looks to attack the goal with that quickness and gets direct to goal. I think he had a goal and 2 or 3 assists in that opening game. So he finishes with 2 and 4. And you would say after the first game, this is a guy who might score 10 goals. And then he had a second goal, I think, not too much later. So it was a bit of a season where he came out of the gates like a cannon, and then it tailed off a little bit. And again, primarily because of how well the other players on the Whitecaps played, making it difficult for him to get into the team. But it's that directness, that trickiness, his real desire to attack the goal that I think Austin fans will like from the left-sided position primarily.
Yeah, and then I did want to ask about that. So he starts off strong, and then the minutes over time go down. Like, is there a particular weakness in his game that people need to watch out for, or was it just like the other guys were playing so well there were not minutes for him?
If there's a weakness, it's on the defensive side, and Jesper Sorensen, the Whitecap coach, pointed that out a couple of times, not directly, but he indicated that that's an area that needed to be strengthened because the Whitecaps really were a team that were committed defensively from the front. So, as you know, Ryan Gauld, one of the best attacking players in the league, is also one of the best defensive players. And it makes him, as Vanni Sartini used to say, the working man's DP, because he would defend from the front. And Jesper Sorensen, who picked up, obviously, in his first year this year, that was one of the things that he kept from that team, is a desire to press from the front and really try to control the game by winning the ball back closer to the opponent's goal. And maybe that's an area that Jayden Nelson didn't track back quite as well or press quite as well or fit into that mold. But that's something that, you would hope that with a bit of maturity as well, he's still just 23 years old and coming into a new setting where he knows that if he's going to continue to get good minutes, and that's what he's there for, is to play more minutes ahead of a World Cup for Canada next summer, hoping to make that team, that he's going to have to play both sides of the ball.
Is that defensive work? Is that a thing? I know Ali Ahmed they've played him at wing back where he's still pushing up really high and joining the attack. I know he'll track back. Was Sabi a player who was outperforming Nelson defensively as well, or was that just not an expectation on both sides necessarily?
No, it's a good question, and Sabi was asked to do that dirty work as well. And when Sorensen went to the 4-2-3-1 when Thomas Mueller came in, Sabi was not necessarily asked to defend quite as much, and even Nelson, although at that point of the season, Nelson wasn't getting as much in terms of playing time. It was more in the 4-3-3 where you'd see that Nelson and Sabi were asked to do a bit more of the defensive work. But with Kubas and Berhalter in behind, you have such good defensive stalwarts, and then the four in the back too. Laborde on the one side and Ocampo on the other were very good at defending also. So I think it was more so at the beginning of the year where Jesper Sorensen had kind of pointed out that was an area that needed to be addressed. And he had to have complete games. There was very often times where you would see these tremendous flashes, but throughout the course of 90 minutes, they were too few and far between. So that's something where he really needs to pick up and have consistent 90-minute performances. But I think giving him the playing time, he'll adapt to that well.
Well, one thing we noticed is in the past he's played some midfield, and that's not a thing he was asked to do in Vancouver. Do you think there's a chance he could be a difference maker there, or you think he's strictly a winger at this point in his career?
I really feel like his strength is on the wing. I know at TFC he played some midfield as well. He wasn't as impactful there. I think that any time that he was able to get into one-on-one situations in open space, he was able to get direct to goal, whereas at midfield position, if he's more central, let's say even, there's just not that ability to break through the bodies, I don't think, as much without the space. So I think primarily as a wide player is where he would have most success.
Austin's roster build is not done yet, so TBD on exactly what it's going to look like in the next few weeks. But as of right now, it seems like Jayden Nelson is the Osman Bukhari replacement, a designated player that we shipped off to Poland, brought in Jayden Nelson, 23-year-old player who's really had the one breakout season in MLS. I think Nelson, like you said, he's a player with promise, but he hasn't really proven to be a guy you can lean on really hard quite yet. Maybe he can be that guy, but I think as far as like comparing him with Bukhari, he's maybe 80% as effective as Bukhari in very specific scenarios. Bukhari is just like this world-class talent at just the speed, blowing past a guy from a standing position. Like, there's not many people in the world who can do that the same way Bukhari can. But from watching tape on Nelson, just seeing the games that we played against him and things like that, he seems like he will maybe be a more useful player in a lot of other scenarios than Bukhari was. It seems like he's, I don't know. I read him as a pretty smart player and a player with a good work ethic. Does that read correct as someone who has watched him every game?
I fully agree with what you're saying there, Landon, because the other thing is, just because I said maybe there were some areas on the defensive side that he needed to work on it wasn't through a lack of effort, really. It wasn't as if he was a lazy player or took shifts off, so to speak. But he is a different player than Bukhari as well, but he's not a designated player. You mentioned that the roster build isn't finished yet. I don't think this is necessarily the replacement for Bukhari, but I would say that I think there's a ceiling there that's kind of unlimited for Jayden Nelson. I think there is more potential for this player to evolve and to improve from what we've seen in the so-called breakout season. It was more on track to be a breakout season in the beginning of the year. So I guess the question mark is, why didn't things continue to go in an upward trajectory? Is that just a young player, or is that competition for spots where the Whitecaps somehow, with so many different roster ramifications, players away on international duty, injuries, there was fixture congestion because they were in so many tournaments right till the end this year. How did he not keep his place in the team? And so I think that's part of the bigger question. But I think the ceiling is high for him. I think there's still a lot he can do. And maybe this next season in MLS again is an even bigger breakout season for him.
One other thing that I wanted to look back into some of the tape on was, you see him on the field. He plays with a little bit of fire to him. When a call doesn't go his way, he'll show a reaction. And so I went back and watched, I found all of his cards in MLS. He never gets cards for dissent. All of his cards were for overly enthusiastic tackles, let's call them, from the ones that I saw. Is he a guy to you that channels that fire in a good way?
I think so. Yeah. I'm impressed by your research there to check out all his cards and what they were for. But you reminded me of what we ended up seeing throughout the course of the season this year. And it is a fiery player who plays with an edge. And I like that about him, because it means that he's got a determination to want to prove people wrong. He's got a little chip on his shoulder. He even said that coming back from Europe, where after leaving Toronto, it didn't go great. I wouldn't say at Toronto FC. I think some people doubted whether he was a player that could ever fit into the Canadian team. And I know that's a big motivator for him to get more minutes to prove that. But he had an okay time in Europe, but I think coming back, it was a bit of a gamble for the Whitecaps, and it was one that obviously paid off, because he was a great roster player and had some really good flash moments. But I think that desire to show people that he can do it, and maybe he wants to prove some people wrong. And I would say that he'd probably want to prove the Whitecaps wrong as well for letting him go.
So, Paul, you have 50 some odd caps for the Canadian national team. Jayden Nelson is a player who seems to be a little bit on the fringe right now. Do you see him being a part of the World Cup squad this summer?
At this very moment, I would say no, but I say that hoping he hears this, so that he wants to prove Canadians wrong. But that, I think, is more as a testament to how strong the Canadian team is right now, that you have to be a 90-minute player over the course of 30 games or, 26, 28 games, rather than an impact sub or a guy who plays or starts 15, 16 games. So that's going to be down to him. That's what the coaches always say too, right? Like Jesse Marsh will say the same thing. I'm not picking the national team. You are. You're going to force your way onto the team by the way you play. And I don't think Jesse Marsh is afraid to pick up players late in the stage here who haven't been regulars in either the 11 or the 23-man squads as of late. But if you're asking me the question whether he's on that 23-man squad right now, I would say no. But I hope he can prove us wrong, because he would be a dynamic player to have in that squad as well.
It's probably part of the reason why he wanted more playing time, right? Specifically right now, is he's certainly not going to earn his way onto the team if he's not even starting next to one of the other guys who's almost certainly going to be on the team, Ali Ahmed. So, yeah, it seems like in Austin, right? Looking at the roster build now, I think he's going to get his minutes. So it really will be on his shoulders, I think.
Yeah, that's excellent. And it is a motivator for him. regardless of whether he ends up making the World Cup squad, definitely he wanted to play more. And I think you need to admire that as well, as a guy who wants to continue to go on that upward trajectory. Right now, the players in his position with Canada, Alphonso Davies, Tajon Buchanan, Ali Ahmed, as you say, there's a number of good attacking players in that same spot. But I'm sure that at this point, he would just like to have a good MLS season with Austin and eventually make his way back into the Canadian team. It doesn't have to be all or nothing for this World Cup in 2026. It would be obviously a nice to have being in your own home country. But it's a motivator for him, and I think that is to the benefit of Austin.
So we had you on to talk about Jayden Nelson, but while we have you, I wanted to ask you another question. There's been a bit of a debate over the existence of Austin FC, and I imagine the reasons will be obvious to you as I ask the question, but the debate is like, how much does a coach matter? Where are the places that a coach matters? You see Sorensen come into Vancouver with added some players after he joined, but more or less the same roster they had the year before. He comes in, they instantly look like a different team, instantly look like a contender. Are you able to put into words, like, what did he do that made this team what it was? If it was him, if you think it was him.
I am reluctantly, and I only say this not because I don't like Jesper Sorensen. I love him. The interactions we've had with him have been phenomenal. And I say that both from the Apple TV broadcasts and even when I did some of the local radio broadcasts here and kind of got a closer idea of what the man was all about as well as the coach. But I was a big Vanni Sartini fan. Terrific fella. I think got a lot out of that team. Using kind of different tactics, maybe more motivational tactics. Obviously an excellent coach too. I mean, he knows the game unlike many others around North America, Vanni Sartini does. But there was a different approach to the way that Jesper Sorensen took this team and the direction that he took them this year that is impossible for me to say wasn't that much better than what Vanni had put, or the foundation that Vanni had laid down. Let's put it that way. How he wasn't the coach of the year is beyond me. And that's with a lot of respect to Bradley Carnell, who and what he did in Philadelphia. And obviously Mikey Veras as well with an expansion team. Full respect. It maybe it's a difficult year for the three coaches to only have one winner. But Jesper Sorensen nailed it, crushed it in year one. So to kind of answer your question specifically, my eyes were opened up, I think, more than ever to the fact that a new coach, a manager can have an impact, not just with a bump of a new guy in there that motivates you maybe in a different way, but the way that he allowed his players to play to their potential, to enjoy their football. I'm going to use this example of a game that we called the first game with Vanni a couple of seasons ago against Charlotte at home, where they drew 1-1, and it's your home opener. The crowd wants to get behind you, and it was a flat game that was very reactive. I felt that the Whitecaps were passive, defensive-oriented, not bunkering down by any means. I mean, it's Charlotte FC at that point a couple of years ago. It wasn't like Inter Miami, you know what I'm saying? So in my mind, he should have let the players get after Charlotte, get the crowd behind you, set the tempo, not just for that game, but for the whole season by being a proactive, attack-minded team. And that is exactly what Jesper Sorensen did with all the players that were still with that team, as you mentioned, the Ryan Gaulds, the Brian Whites, those types of players. But he allowed them to play. Tristan Blackman went out of his way to say that. You know, the coach has confidence in us. And he did that too, Jesper did, with players like Ralph Priso, who I didn't think was a great pickup when he came over from Colorado, but he turned him into this, I'm going to call almost all-star type center back at the end of the year. He was almost irreplaceable. He was the guy you didn't want to miss out in that center back position. So the sign of a good coach to me is when your best 11 aren't available and you have to bring in the players off the bench, and each of them ends up performing as well as your so-called starters. Obviously, that says a lot about the system that they play, the belief that the players have in the system, their understanding of it, which again was very proactive, win the ball high up the field, win the ball back as quick as you can. And it was a style that the team liked to play, and that reflected, I think, in the results.
this is maybe a harder question. Maybe you can't actually answer it, but what are the, like, how do you do that? Aside from, I know, like, there's like the man management charisma aspect of it, but is there like X's and O's aspects of how you do that? Or is it about managing a group of people?
Yeah, I think we'd all be coaches in MLS if we could kind of figure that out. But he has kind of a unremarkable CV as well. You know, his resume isn't the best coach in Denmark or the best coach in Europe or anything like that, really. It just maybe was a situation. He didn't even want to coach. He was going to take some time off. They almost had to convince him to come over. And he ended up coming over, and maybe it was that attitude of he seems quite laissez-faire, but he
I need to tell you a story about that. So
yeah.
When Vancouver came to Austin late in the season, most of the time head coaches are not on the field during warmups. He comes out, is standing there eating a protein bar or something, hand in his pocket, and just kind of taking in the scenes, looking at the supporter section, looking around, not watching his team at all. Not like he just acted like a guy who wandered onto the field and was like, "Oh, what's going on here?" It was like a very Mr. Bean kind of posture to him. And I was like, this man is not worried about anything right now.
He's got a great way about him. He's very good conversationally. I'm riveted by the things that he says in the meetings that we have before the games, the broadcast meetings. He is never over the top in either his reactions to the officials. Obviously, all coaches get wound up one way or another. He's passionate, don't get me wrong, by any means, but he just seems to hit all the right buttons. So is there an X's and O's that can be replicated for any coach coming in? No, it's part of his overall makeup that just makes him him. And let's hope for, Whitecaps supporters anyway, if I'm talking on behalf of them, let's hope that can continue, because it was a magical year in Vancouver. It really was, going all the way to the final and deserving to go all the way to the final, both in the MLS Cup, obviously, and the CONCACAF Champions Cup. I mean, they were deserving finalists in both. And really, if they had won either one, as they did the Canadian Championship, you would have said they were deserving of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Paul, that's all we have for you. Thanks so much for joining us again. It's a pleasure. Pleasure every time.
Yeah, happy to do it anytime, guys. Take care. And good luck this season.
Thank you. Same to you. All right. We want to thank Paul Dolan one more time. It's a pleasure, as always, to have him here. We'd like to remind you to rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. I believe Mike made this up last week on the show of leaving a review with your New Year's resolution, be it Austin FC related or otherwise. But go ahead and do that, and we'll read some of those on the show if you do that next time. I think that's all. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week to discuss any other Austin FC news that breaks, and maybe talk a little bit about the first week of preseason and what's to come in. We're expecting maybe some news about what preseason will actually look like between now and then, so hopefully we'll have more details. Until then, I'm Landon Cottam.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
No one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente. Oh my God.
Because they love to chew boom boom sauce.
Yeah.